sleep deprivation, starvation, and public humiliation. These are just a few things the followers of Mother God in the Love Has Won cult had to endure. So it begs the question, why would they subject themselves to such treatment? Today, in part 2 of this saga, we try to understand why people got sucked into this cult and why some members are still loyal today. So sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh Erin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're brand new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I upload 2 or 3 videos a week on one of these topics, so if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell because I would absolutely love to have you here. And also, this month I am featuring a different single parent in each of my videos. I was raised by a single mother, and I know how difficult this time of year can be. So today, I'd love to share Tiffany's story. Tiffany writes, "Hi, Erin. I'm a single mama, and recently my son and I have been forced to leave our home and are currently staying, I pay weekly, in a hotel room in Elkton, Maryland. It's very expensive, and we left with very minimal belongings. Basically, what I could grab quickly and fit into an Uber. This is a new area to us, and I'm desperately searching for better employment and a vehicle as well as permanent housing. To say this has been the roughest year of our life would be an understatement. But we're safe and we have each other, and at the end of the day, that's all I can ask for." His name is Lucas, and he's 14. He'll be 15 in February. Attached are a few items that we're in need of for our current situation, which right now extends a little bit behind just holiday needs. So she did email me a follow-up email, and she said she's happy to add some Christmassy stuff, but right now she's really needing just these basic necessities that she put in her Amazon wish list cart. And I think there's a couple little Christmas gifts for her son too. But I think as a family, they're just really struggling right now. So I just wanted to take note of that. She emailed me and asked if she should add some more Christmassy stuff. And I said, she should just do whatever is like what she needs the most. So I believe that that's what you'll find in the cart. Weekly, I pay $399.99 to stay in our room, and we only have a small refrigerator and a microwave. Other than that, it's very basic. It's just a little Motel 6, nothing fancy, but it's the very cheapest place I could find with the situation that unfolded. I've managed to pay weekly for the last 2 months, but money is running very short, and I'm really hoping to find something more permanent for us as far as housing is concerned, as well as a better job. Even if you're unable to help us with our wish list, prayers are always welcome and much appreciated. We hope you and your family have the very best holiday season, and I wish you many blessings in the new year. I'm a new follower to your channel on YouTube, and I absolutely love your content. Thank you so much. And I love that you're doing this help for families in need this season. We know there's others who are much worse off than us, but if you're able, we'd love to be considered." That really moved me. I've like when I first read that, I was like moved to tears. It just sounds like she's really been put through the ringer. So if there's anything that you can do to help her and her son, that would be greatly appreciated. You'll find the link to her Amazon wish list in the pinned comment down below, so you should be able to find it very quickly and easily. Thank you so much for your prayers and for anything you can provide.
"I have not told my whole family that God is on the planet. I have doubts about myself, and I keep that within. Through my unconsciousness, I have stole her joy many times. I have ate without gratitude.
Takes away her joy because we're not being food, accidentally eating food or unconsciously eating food that has been specifically put aside for her. As you shared, she has a huge issue with food, and most of the time she can barely eat. So the food is a huge energetic, and most people don't understand why. But when you watch someone go 4, 5, 6 days without eating, food is a big deal. So when there are specific foods that do resonate with her body, very few do. And unconsciously eat them. It's like a direct affront,
back to God, and then allowing her to direct those energies in the highest. So you might think something sounds petty, eating a snack in unconsciousness, stealing a snack, stealing some food. It's not. It's all energy, and if the intention isn't pure, then it needs to be corrected, and we've uh, that's why Saint Germain has directed us to gain more full awareness and to increase our awareness surrounding the ways in which we take, the ways in which we uh, destabilize mom's energies and the progress. So thank you.
Part of the tactic that lured people into this group was Amy and or her protege, for lack of a better word, Faith, being able to convince people that they were meant for more via their online healing sessions. Amy and Faith would tell people that they were special and they had a special purpose in this lifetime. And that purpose would be to move to California with Amy to join the mission, which was basically to allow all humanity to rise to the 5D, which to people who were feeling lost, unworthy, or otherwise undervalued, this might have been a big opportunity for them. They were the special ones. Amy, or Mother God, had propped herself up as a divine entity, as God herself. So, what exactly did Amy believe? Because when you watch the documentary and you hear this story, it's like a hodgepodge of New Age spirituality mixed with Christianity, mixed with theories, and just like a smorgasbord of different things. I mean, she really liked to cherry pick her favorite pieces of different religions. I mean, she was sent here to apparently clean up the failed experiment that is free will. She had multiple incarnations over 19 billion human years, and now she was here to create the new earth. And anyone who didn't recognize her as God would basically be thrown into the sun. Conveniently stealing from Christianity, Jehovah's Witnesses, another cult, and Islam alike, she claimed that all who worshipped her as God would be saved and would be able to live in this new earth, in the fifth dimension, and exist forever, eternity, in pure bliss and harmony. But there was only room for 144,000 people in a world full of billions, so I mean, with that alone, she should have expected to receive a little pushback. And in her eyes, anyone who did give her pushback was stuck in the 3D matrix illusion and had a programmed ego mind. She began preaching that there were mobs of people over all her lifetimes that were constantly making her mission on this earth difficult. And in the late 2010s, she began to referring to the cabal. Sound familiar? So, in her attempt to create this us versus them mentality, she created a strange delusion of what the world was like. It was this dangerous place where people were all living in a 3D illusion, who were all stuck in their egos. I mean, she borrowed terminology from conspiracy theories and began sharing really dangerous rhetoric about people like Hitler, who, in her eyes, was working for the light. Like, what? So we're just gonna throw a nice dash of anti-Semitism into the mix too. It doesn't make sense. It sounds like she picked a bunch of things that could either invoke fear in people or make people angry. And conveniently enough for her, if you can get people into those two emotional states, they are a lot easier to control. And there have actually been studies done on this. Also, as we got closer to 2016 and into basically 2020, any of those strange out of your mind theories that you heard in the era of Trump's America is probably something that she was teaching. This cabal was real and they were the enemy. And she referred to leaving the cult house as being out in the field. So if anyone left the house, they were out in the field on mission. As if to say that when her followers left the house, they were essentially going to war. So it all paints a very dark and dangerous picture, like exactly the opposite of what she was preaching about, spreading love and light. Instead, it was almost like all of her followers who were full of love and light were like going out to war when they wanted a cup of coffee from the local coffee shop. So it begs the questions, how and why were people drawn into this group? Well, like all victims of cults, they were likely vulnerable and seeking some kind of healing. They went to the wrong website at the wrong time. So, I want to paint a picture for you. Let's just go down memory lane. So, it's the late 2000s, early 2010s, and the internet has been around for a little while, and people are really beginning to connect with other people from all over the world. But also, people are getting scammed online. Children are getting abducted. And after 9/11, conspiracy theories are beginning to run rampant. The internet felt like a very dangerous place, and Dateline was there to remind us of that danger constantly. But there were also positives to the internet. People were being exposed to different ways of life. So, when the housing market crashed in 2007, with the stock market crashing subsequently in 2008, and people lost their financial security and safety net, some began to question whether it was all worth it. And many still do to this day. I think it's safe to say that a lot of us question whether the American way of life is for us. This idea that we have to be in a constant cycle of waking up, going to work, going home, sleeping, waking up, and repeat, it was getting exhausting for people, especially for people who had seemingly lost everything in the recession of 2008. Suddenly, all that work and effort they had put into providing a happy, materialistic, or 3D life, as the cult would call it all just seemed so meaningless. So people were turning to the internet to find their healing. And a lot of the children of the adults who were impacted by this had, grown up in this time, so they saw the impact that the recession had on their family. They saw their life change. So by the time they were stepping out into the world to work and start a life of their own, they were already kind of questioning the systems that were in place. And and I'm a child of this generation, we really were told that we could do anything, we could be whatever we wanted. So it was like, could we really trust this way of life that we had been conditioned as capitalists to strive for? And, these young people, they're all internet savvy. They're starting to get involved in politics and the voting process and are finding these corners of the internet that are a little less common. Corners that might promote somewhat concerning different ways of thinking and ways of living. So, in the late 2010s, when Trump announces his presidency and these conspiracy theories seem to become more mainstream, people who were already engaged in those corners of the internet felt validated. So, their beliefs took even more root. Something else was taking root too at the time, and that was a more simplistic and holistic way of life. I definitely started to find that online. I was kind of looking for an all natural way of living and wanting to be pure and kind of wanting to abandon this like hustle bustle way of life. I was never a conspiracy theorist. I was more of like a hippie chick, but like I can kind of understand like I just want to use coconut oil and you know, lay out on the beach eating coconuts every day. Like I think a lot of us were seeking just like a more peaceful way of life. We were all seeking out new information regarding our health, whether it was your physical health or your mental health or your financial health. And in a society where the healthcare system has been monetized, if you hadn't recovered after that recession, embracing a more holistic ideology might appeal to you, especially if you've just gone through something traumatic in your personal life or are just looking for a deeper meaning to life. So, this is when you might come across the Love Has Won website and forum. You see this charismatic, pretty woman sharing some of the same ideas as you, but she says them with such conviction, such knowledge that you begin to take it as fact. Things begin to resonate a lot more with you. And honestly, we see this a lot even in modern times. So remember, just because someone is speaking with conviction or calmly doesn't mean they're not full of, shit. Just saying. Just trying to protect y'all out there. We talk a lot on this channel about if there can even be an online cult. And in part one, I discussed the algorithm and how it tends to promote a cult mentality because it only shows you more of what you're already interested in. We become kind of scared to research the opposing side of a topic or belief because we don't want to get stuck on like that side of the internet. And one of the questions I've had while researching this cult has been, how did these people get sucked in so deep and how are some still stuck? Because I have to admit, I'm a very empathetic person, but there were moments that I was watching that documentary and I was like, What? You can't be serious." So, it's my belief that a lot of the people who got sucked into this cult had already been exploring these little hidden corners of the internet. Between conspiracy theories and holistic cures to ailments and searching for some kind of new religious philosophy, I believe the followers were kind of already indoctrinating themselves in a way. And combined with daily intense substance abuse, these beliefs just became very deeply rooted. Let's take Ashley Peluso, a key player in this cult, who Mother God ended up renaming Hope, as an example. Ashley had just gotten out of a bad relationship when she discovered love has won. She was reportedly absolutely distraught over the loss of this relationship and was looking for some emotional healing when she came upon the website. She was, in a way, romanced by the idea that her sadness could be healed energetically. So she signed up for a healing session. She was in deep emotionally pain. She was feeling those breakup feelings of unworthiness. So when her healer told her that she was special and important and had a higher purpose on earth than what she was currently doing, well, it filled the exact void she needed to be filled. She heard the call and followed right along. She moved to California to serve her now guru, Mother God. She placed all responsibility of her healing in Mother God's hand. And this is a tactic that cult leaders frequently use, and it truly is a dangerous one. Because once a vulnerable victim of the cult begins to feel better, begins to feel like they've healed, all of the credit for that healing process goes to the cult leader, not the person who's done all the inner work to heal. In therapy, therapists give you tools so that in the rest of your daily life, you can get triggered and kind of use some of those therapeutic tools to maybe relax your trigger or not react to your trigger the way you normally would. So it's like, yes, going to therapy is helping, but you're the one actually using those tools in an effective way. You're doing the hard work of looking at yourself and being honest with yourself. But in a cult, they put the leader up on an even higher pedestal. They thank the leader for all that healing because it's not about you, it's about you being near the Mother God's healing energy. And in this case, as Amy or Mother God got her tantrums or got sick, it was because she was healing you. You're putting this negative energy on her so she can heal you. And it plants a seed of guilt and shame into the follower's mind. And what's our natural instinct as humans when someone makes us feel bad about something we did? We try even harder to make them happy. So Ashley was trying to get closer and closer to Mother God. She'd brush her hair, give her massages, bring her snacks. I mean, she believed that her purpose in life, now that she was healed, was to serve Mother God in gratitude because she healed her and now Mother God could heal others. I mean, Ashley was all set, right? She was living a purposeful life, trying to heal the world and help Mother God create a new earth. She had a place to live. She didn't need to work a typical 3D job. She got to party every night and live stream all day, literally from 6 a.m. until God knows when. It seems like this new life is just a great way to live. But what did living in that cult really look like?
This feels like my intuition telling me something's not right. One of the main things was the sleep deprivation. Amy did in fact lie on Dr. Phil, and the members backed her up, which is even sadder because all the members know how it is because they're members and because I lived with all of them, and it's the truth. She only lets us sleep 4 hours. We have to wake up every day at 5 a.m. We start live stream at 6. Everything is revolved around Amy. I came out with all these amazing herbal supplements, and pretty much I don't get the credit, she does. All the money that came from the herbal supplements, that came from things that we create and that we make, it all goes to Amy because Amy is considered God in that experience. So in that experience, you also can only go out into 3D when she commands you. You can't go out if you like to go out on your own, like you're really not supposed to. And then when you decide to be out longer than she wanted you to be out, you get told you're a Lilith whore, you're in Lucifer, you're in your ego. So these are some things that I really had to touch on. I'm trying to feel into other things that happened to me. It was a lot of things that I went through being with Love Is One. I had my ups and I had my downs, and I'm very grateful, for my experience overall. I am, like I said, I'm not trying to say anything bad about anybody. I just want to expose the pieces that Love Is One does not tell people about, because there's this message being put out that it's all love and good vibes, and then people get in there and they're like, whoa, we got to wake up at this time, we got to do this for her, we got to do that for her. And she tries to manipulate you and make you believe that it's all for you. It's building you up to be your greatest, grandest version. But really what it's doing is building her up for her greatest, grandest version. Meanwhile, you're so energetically drained and tired, you can't even really function and do things when you're running on 4 hours of sleep. You have all these things you do throughout the day that she wants you to do that are consistently having to be done. A lot of the time, members will put on a front and act like, oh, it's great, it's like little elves for Santa. And it's really like, dude, can I take a nap? Because that's what many of them would say. And that's what I would say, that it got to a point where there was a moment that Ashley and I even went into the woods and took a nap because we were told we weren't allowed to take naps. So that's why she said, yeah, they take naps, but technically we're not allowed to take naps. So sleep deprivation tactic 101, that is being used. Another thing to point out to everybody is that high altitude. When you're at a high altitude, you're already lacking oxygen to the brain, which causes you to hallucinate and see and feel and experience things that aren't real. If somebody gets you weak enough and not in your head, you believe and buy the things that get said, because we manifest our own experiences. So, glad I got that off my chest and out of my heart. Another thing is the resistance I had to making these videos. I had a lot of resistance. I was actually almost afraid to make these videos. And that right there told me that that's not right. I should not be afraid to speak out on my experience and how it made me feel, because this was my experience. I have the right to my experience and to the right to vocalize my experience. So anyways, I love all of you. I pray for all of you all the time. And this is a video to help many of those who feel wounded, who feel alone, who feel like they have no one to talk to, who feel like it's their ego. It's not your ego. It's you, man. It's your heart. It's your intuition telling you.
This cult, like others before it, had a set of beliefs and rules that were required in order to abandon your ego and achieve true ascension into the 5D realm. First, you had to abandon all your 3D based needs. So if you were prescribed any medications, you are now forbidden to take them because the pharmaceutical companies are trying to damage your brain and it was lowering your vibration. So let's say you suffer from depression or joint pain and are prescribed medication. Nope, you don't need it. The true healing tools are alcohol and drugs, but most importantly, colloidal silver. Colloidal silver somehow became this magic cure that could cure any ailment, and you needed to drink it daily to ward off all disease. And I just really quickly need to debunk this claim because I have seen this theory being spread around social media over the last several years, even as a cure for, the pandemic. But I want to make it very clear that colloidal silver is toxic. used to be mixed in some ointments to treat exterior wounds, but it should absolutely never be consumed. It can literally cause seizures, kidney failure, and it can even turn your skin blue forever. Like, you can't reverse the side effects of this mineral once they begin to happen without some type of laser treatment on your skin that is most likely very costly. It's a very dangerous practice to drink this stuff, and I don't know where this belief came from. I think it's because it has been used to help treat wounds and cuts outside the body. So people thought it would do the same to like cells inside the body. And, in the wellness community, there will be buzzwords like we hear gut health being talked about a lot right now. And it's not like everyone has a problem with their gut, but since it's like trending, everybody thinks if they're bloated, they have a gut issue when really it could be acid reflux or they just had a negative reaction to something they ate or they just need to go see a doctor and see what's really going on. But there's the term inflammation that I speculate was why this colloidal silver started colloidal. I keep saying colloidal. I'm sorry. It's colloidal. But I speculate this is why colloidal silver was being used so much because there are sources online that say it helps with inflammation, but it's inflammation that happens around a physical wound, like in your skin. It is not meant to treat like joint inflammation inside your body. So I don't know if that's partly why people thought that it was going to heal them from the inside. I don't know, but please just do not drink this stuff. If you're having some type of ailment, please go see your doctor and get a legitimate diagnosis. Colloidal silver is not a cure all. In fact, it is toxic. Another dangerous but sometimes touted as holistic healing practice is staring into the sun. Yeah, they would encourage their followers to stare into the sun daily because it will help with energetic downloads and help you ascend into the 5D. It's all about this healing, healing, healing. They said that if it hurts to stare into the sun, to hold your eyelids open and do it anyways. This can actually be incredibly damaging to your retina if you do it just once, just one time. And these people were at a higher altitude. They were literally closer to the sun than a lot of us. They were living on a mountain. So they were getting this really intense sun exposure to their eyeballs. Now, this brings me to how the cult controlled food. As we learned in part one, Amy had a very toxic relationship with food, even at a very young age. A lot of her value was measured by her weight. So, this toxic way of thinking, coupled with the delusion that she would one day be carried up into the clouds by her galactic family, meant that she had to be at a very low weight so that she could ascend higher, as if the less she weighed, the less gravity would have an effect on her. And of course, she was leading by example, so her followers began to believe this concept too, and she also controlled their food intake. They all started to believe that the thinner they were, the higher they could ascend. And there was a lot of control around what they could eat. They couldn't eat genetically modified foods or most sugars, and this part was really fascinating to me. They couldn't be vegan or vegetarian because apparently animals were sent here for us to eat. They said that veganism is a pain based belief and it was designed to lower your vibration, which it's just really funny to me because when I was really getting into woo woo stuff back in the, 20 teens and I first went vegan, which I've been vegan for like 11 years, it was always touted as like a way to raise your vibration and reduce suffering. So, and I don't care what you eat. I'm not trying to have an opinion on anything. It's just the way I live my life. But I just think it's so funny that in the spiritual community, people can have such drastically opposite points of view. But I'm like, can you just eat some vegetables? Like, usually when people want to lose weight, aren't they encouraged to eat more veggies? It just seemed like anything the outside 3D world believed about health and healing just was not allowed. Nothing from doctors, you have to eat meat, you have to stare at the sun, and oh, hey, tobacco, totally okay as long as it's hand rolled. It just really felt like these were all projections from Amy. Things that she was doing that were harmful to her, smoking in excess, drinking in excess, potentially not getting diagnosed, having an eating disorder, were all divine action, and anything that's actually promoted as healthy in the mainstream is bad for you. I'm almost certain that anyone from the outside looking in might see Amy and her behavior and think, wow, this is a woman that really needs some help. She's almost crying for help. She might be an addict or grappling with another mental health challenge, but she's demonizing anyone or anything that would imply that there's an area of her life where she could improve upon. And she's forcing her followers to behave exactly the way she is, kind of like if they're all doing it, that means it's okay if I'm doing it. And in fact, they have to do it because this is what it's like to live in 5D. And in some weird, twisted way, she's creating a group of people around her to enable her behavior, in my opinion. She would have these brief, glimmering moments where she was almost seeing past her delusions, but then she would fall right back into it, partly because the people in the cult were not letting her do things like go to the doctor when she starts turning blue. She just didn't have anyone around her anymore who believed that what she was doing could be wrong in any way. Members of this cult were also expected to basically empty out their bank accounts when they arrived and give it to the mission. In exchange, they got to live in the house with all these people, have their daily food intake controlled. They were only allowed 4 hours of sleep, and they had to wear coordinating colors of the chakras and days of the week. So, yeah, sounds like a good deal. Like, literally, there are 7 chakras, 7 chakra colors, and each chakra is connected to an energy center on your body. So I guess in theory, you would wear that color to focus on that energy center each day in the week. So Monday would be like the lower red root chakra. Yeah. So day to day life, you would apparently wake up at 5 a.m. You would get on the live stream at 6 a.m. You would do that literally all day long. And then you would confess all your sins at night in this like weird group setting. It was just really, really strange and incredibly, incredibly controlled. I mean, you had to ask permission to leave the house, you had to ask permission to eat a piece of food. And if you didn't, you had to apologize for it. But if you're truly believing that Mother God will take care of you and you'll be living a fulfilled, purposeful life, and you have this purpose that's larger than yourself, and if your circumstance before this felt way worse than in it, you might very well think that Mother God is your savior. And what happened if you didn't give Mother God all your money? You would be publicly shamed and maybe even abused for it. See, this created a disorganized attachment to Mother God. According to Mary Main, a researcher from University of California, Berkeley, creating this fear-based relationship between a leader and follower can create a very confusing emotional bond between the two. According to an article that explained this study in detail, this is, quote, a traumatic state that derails a person's ability to think logically and clearly about the situation, and therefore take action to resolve it. Furthermore, never achieving safety from the threat, they will keep returning to the relationship trying to gain that safety. Having disabled logical thinking about the traumatic relationship, the leader can then introduce even more of the fictitious ideology to explain away and redirect the followers' terror, unquote. And I'm going to add terror, complaint, or concern, which, by the way, they weren't allowed to voice. So when we question, how could people believe this stuff? These people are crazy. They're delusional. How could they support this woman and abandon their families? They're lunatics. We have to start acknowledging that they're being deeply, deeply manipulated. They're exhausted, they're hungry, and they're desperate for approval from their leader. It's a lot like Stockholm Syndrome, where the prisoner feels this bond to their captor. Their individuality's been stripped away, they've been given a new name. And if they do anything self serving, like, heaven forbid, drink an extra cup of coffee, they're publicly shamed for it. So it is safer to just try to stay in the cult leader's good graces. It's just self-preservation. Plus, all the followers are forced to speak in these positive connotations at all time. They're never allowed to complain to each other or express any type of concern. And a lot of times in cults, if you hear a complaint from another follower, you're supposed to report it to your leader. So it creates this like fear of even expressing to anyone any negative feeling or concern. They were being completely controlled in every way, from behavior, information, thoughts, and emotional control. This leader was effectively using every part of the bite model to control them. Plus, they were completely isolated. They weren't allowed to leave. If they did leave to go into the field, they were forced to ask permission, and if they didn't, they were publicly humiliated and forced to publicly apologize for their behavior. They were always in the wrong, and they'd been indoctrinated to believe that every single thing Mother God said was fact. She was incapable of telling lies, or so she said. So whenever she said something was their fault, they believed her.
Surrender! Surrender when you are stolen from God!
Shame on you. What do you feel is gonna happen to your tricked ass? It's gonna get tricked out is what's gonna happen. For eternity. Whore.
Is I've been a fucking complete washout to this point. I fucking hate myself, but I love myself and I don't know what to do with it. Because I won't listen to you, God. I refuse to fucking listen to you. I'm praying every fucking day, because I can't breathe. I got my head stuck in my fucking asshole, like the rest of humanity. Tell them.
That dick needs to die. Because the dick is getting in the way of the heart.
Your phallus, your fucking Washington dick monument is being brought down. No more dicks in charge. Pussy run this house.
Throughout the docuseries and in many accounts found online, there was this implication that the third Father God, real name Jason, was the catalyst that really made Amy change. He was the new Father God after the second one. John kind of like bowed out by claiming that he sensed someone else, the real Father God, was on their way. And somehow Jason ended up there. Jason had been homeless and in and out of jail before he got involved in the group. He had also allegedly been a dealer and a user. So I think it might be safe to say that he was also an addict. And if you haven't watched part one yet, we did speculate a little bit that perhaps Amy is an addict too. It could very well be true that when Jason joined the group, Amy's addictive behavior was grossly enabled. She somewhat quickly began to transform into this version of what we see most commonly: erratic, loud, screaming, and abusive. These are all symptoms of heavy alcohol abuse. I'm sure we all know, but alcohol can reduce your impulse control and reduce your level of empathy. So it makes sense that Amy would get so enraged if people were negative or just having a feeling that wasn't 5D high vibrational emotion. Instead of being nurturing to them, she would berate them. Alcohol abuse also impairs your cognitive functioning, especially over time, and almost everyone in this group was drinking every night, and Amy is said to have been able to drink more than most people had ever seen in their entire lives. She was becoming increasingly unable to be rational or react calmly. It's like her bloodstream was literally made up of alcohol. She became very aggressive, and the dynamic on her and Jason's relationship became very toxic, and honestly, the opposite of what a loving relationship should look like. It's really scary to watch some of this footage and you just hear her and Jason screaming at each other in the background, and everyone in the video is acting like it's totally normal. Amy and Jason did things that I think we all could agree were very concerning and abusive to each other and to their followers. It seemed their punching bag, almost literally, was this John character, formerly known as Father God, but now known at this point as Father Multiverse. His real name was John. When we see footage of someone being berated and screamed at, it's most often John, but he's at this point stuck in this disorganized attachment with his leaders. It's like he craves any attention from his leaders, and it doesn't matter to him if it's in the form of abuse. The followers were stuck. I mean, some followers even shared that if they did leave, they would be called horrible names and it would be implied that they were whores. The cult leaders would literally call them that.
So we spoke to MG this morning, and then we read also the Skype this morning. So she said, if you wish to stay, you can. So I guess the choice will be yours, if you wish to stay. But of course, if you wish to stay, you have to resolve a lot of the issues that you're having here. You're still hanging on to some of the white programming. There's conditioning issues, self-love. You also have attachment to family still. These are things that MG knows about. MG knows everything here. So MG knows this and we acknowledge this. You know, these are things that have to be resolved. The attachment to family. We're all one. But you gotta let go of the family. You know, there's a certain power over situation there, and every time you bring that energy to the house, it's something that you have to transform, and it brings an imbalance to the house. We're all connected. It's not like we're not. You know this also. You know this information. But that constant interaction with the family, you're bringing in 3D into the house. You know, that's just some of the things, you know. The conditioning that you have comes from, again, from your family. You know, it's the things that they've been conditioned to you, how to be, how to act. When you're in the heart, you don't have to be this way. The heart knows, the heart will guide you. It's very simple. You know, these are things that you have to choose and acknowledge and to transform if you wish to come forward.
I mean, these people were just absolutely trapped. They were stuck in a remote part of the world. They'd been encouraged to cut off all family members because those family members were low vibrational. They had given all their money to the cults, and honestly, the safest thing for them to do at this point was probably to lean in. It was shocking to see in my research videos of Amy or Jason screaming and the followers just sitting there, sometimes with a smirk on their faces. I can't help but think that this is all some kind of weird self preservation trauma response. Like they had to believe, or at least convince themselves that they believed, all the wild things that Amy was telling them, and their personalities began changing as well. To bring it back to Ashley Peluso, in the beginning, she was a bit more shy, a little more timid, and by the end, she was one of the loudest, most outspoken members of the group. I mean, she kind of became the face of their online shop. She said some of the most offensive things, and she would be yelling and screaming while saying these things. I just don't know how being high vibrational equates to screaming, yelling, and berating others. It feels to me like exactly the opposite. I feel like high vibrational feels calm, peaceful, positive. But Amy and her followers had such anger towards everybody else. And they were in this loop where every little bit of strange behavior or happenstance was more and more easily able to be explained away. So when Amy literally begins turning blue because of the colloidal silver and begins experiencing liver and kidney failure due to alcohol abuse and colloidal silver intake, people all just believed it was a symptom of her ascension to the 5D and because she was healing billions of people, because that is what she told them. She was getting ready to be sent to the next galactic plane to continue her work of healing the planet, and maybe her followers believed that they would end up ascending with her, or at least be witness to this incredible moment of cloud ships lifting her up into the sky or the ocean opening up to swallow her in. Amy was dying. And even in the docuseries, we see these glimpses of her acknowledging that she was dying. I think that's part of why this is so tragic, because we rarely see that the cult leader is kind of losing control in this way, and not just of her followers, but of her own mind. It's like she slowly was not able to believe this delusion she had been creating for herself anymore. Even if we look at other life ending cults like the Jonestown Massacre, Jim Jones, the leader, had the audacity to force his followers to poison themselves, but when he watched them writhe in pain from drinking the cyanide, he decided he would shoot himself so he didn't have to experience the same pain. But with Amy, it seemed like there were these little glimpses of hope where she almost denounced everything, where she would ask to go to the hospital, but people thought it was just a symptom of her ascension and it was evil forces trying to hold her down. She had these little cries for help when she was reaching out to her family in the end, or even asking her followers to bring her to the hospital, but they wouldn't. And when people didn't listen to her, when her family wouldn't come visit her, I think because she was in so much pain, probably physical, but also emotional, that her family wasn't going to come visit her, that enraged her even more, and it made her even more committed to being God. I think we see this in that transitionary moment after the Dr. Phil show when she's in Hawaii and the locals become angry. You know, she doesn't get the reaction from Dr. Phil or the general public that she thought she would get, like this confirmation that, like, she was God and people were going to start following her and she would be able to heal the world like she thought she would. But when there was sheer outrage that she was there in Hawaii and she claimed to be the goddess of fire, it's like she's doubling down out of just sheer rage that people aren't listening to her. Like she's desperately trying to remind herself or that she believes that she's God. I mean, this woman was sick. Images of her turning blue and being carried around have literally kept me up at night. And I can't imagine seeing someone I love in that state, even if I thought that, 3D medicine was corrupt. I feel like I would still bring her to the hospital just because I would want her to survive. But Amy had done such a good job of brainwashing herself and her followers into believing that this was all a symptom of her ascending. I found a really lovely blog post on risingabovelhw.com, and her first father god, Andrew, wrote on this blog and said, quote, "It angers me personally that there was nobody around her that saw and loved the person, but rather the god, the idea, which didn't even exist. Limitlessness only exists in the absence of definition." And this was the tragic beginning and end of Amy as Mother God, unquote. And it's just so true. She was a human. She was only human. And because of this brainwashing, and I mean it's her brainwashing. So in a way she did it to herself, but it's so rare that you see a cult leader literally be their own demise. A common theme we heard throughout the docuseries was people witnessing Amy doing things they had never seen a human do before, and that was seemingly all the evidence they needed to prove that she was God. She claimed that alcohol was a healing tool for her, so followers saw that she could drink all day and all night more than they'd ever seen a single person drink, so, well, it must be true. She began turning blue because she was poisoning herself with colloidal silver, but she claimed it was just an ascension symptom, so they believed her and kept feeding her colloidal silver for even days after she had died. It all led them to the same conclusion. She is God. That was the physical evidence they saw. But when they see the physical evidence that she's not rising up to the sky, they cannot seem to see reality. When the cops show up and arrest people because there's been a dead body in the bed for 2 weeks, they still cannot comprehend that Amy is not God. When she did pass on, another piece of proof that her followers decided meant she was God was that her body got warm again and became soft, almost as if she was coming in and out of consciousness. They believed that it meant that she was still actually with them. But actually, after about 36 hours, rigor mortis, that stiffness that corpses experience very soon after death, actually disappears from the body. It's a phase known as secondary flaccidity, and it's when the body really begins the decomposition process. One of the most disturbing parts of this story for a lot of people has been the fact that her followers and her partner spent like 2 weeks with her corpse after she passed on and didn't end up ascending. I don't even want to see a dead body, let alone be in close proximity to one, especially if it's someone I love. I just can't imagine. But I think they were trying to preserve her body because they still believed that she was gonna ascend. They basically prepared her to do so. They wrapped her body in a sleeping bag, wrapped up some Christmas lights around her, and laid her in her bed. But she was decomposing. Jason, or Father God, is even quoted as saying, "You could smell God's presence," but it was her body decomposing. And to combat that scent, they just kept lighting incense. One of the most clickbaity things I've seen in regard to this case was that the followers had mummified her body, which they hadn't. Due to the discoloration of her skin and how long her body had been decomposing, I think when the cops found her body, she really looked like she'd been mummified. I mean, within the first 3 minutes of that documentary, you see her body, which I really wish they hadn't just like shown you that right away because it was quite jarring, but it was disturbing. So apparently between 10 and 20 days after death, the body goes through something called black putrefaction and the skin ends up turning black. So that combined with the blueness of her skin and how thin she was, it really must have given the appearance that she was mummified. And I mean, she's kind of wrapped up in a tomb of sorts in her sleeping bag and Christmas lights. All of that to say is her followers did not like actively mummify her. I think they were just holding on to her body as long as they could. And in the end, it seems like she got what she wanted, to be adored and loved by many. This cult is a really difficult one to cover because I find my feelings to be a little bit torn. On one hand, I recognize that she was an abusive and manipulative cult leader who did all the classic cult tactics to try to get money and attention from people. And this, in a warped way, gave her a sense of worth that she'd always been longing for. I mean, I feel for the followers, even though they denied bringing her to the hospital in the end and they still continue to preach their toxic beliefs on people. But at the end of the day, they are still victims in this situation. They gave up jobs, family, money, and time all to worship and enable an addict, in my opinion. And they're getting absolutely ridiculed on the internet now. And that's probably, maybe ironically, only proving to them that all of us, all the people that live in the 3D realm, are the enemy. Because when you're treating someone that thinks you're bad with so much disdain and judgment, you're just kind of fueling the fire. What cult victims need is compassion, and we need to try to understand them more. But when we attack and make fun of, they're just going to dive deeper into their belief because that is now their safe space to exist in. And on the other hand, I can't help but have some empathy for Amy. Usually, when we have occults and cult leaders, they're very clearly and intentionally trying to take advantage of people. And Amy did that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a cult leader apologist, but I also think that she was really controlled by an addiction. And in the end, even though it was pretty sheepish, she did kind of call out for help. But that's the point. She was so deep in her delusion that admitting she wasn't God would mean admitting her entire life up to that point had been a lie. I mean, the woman abandoned her child so that she could play mom to a bunch of adults because she needed to heal them. I mean, I think she was really trying to justify her life in her head. It does not excuse what she did, but I do think she was her own victim. She victimized herself, you know? And I think it's the same story for the victims who still preach these teachings. Like, they can't see that their ex leader poisoned herself to death and that she wasn't an enlightened or divine being. I don't know if they'll ever be able to abandon their beliefs and embrace the beautiful 3D world that we live in. If being able to see, touch, and even smell the reality that their leader is not a divine, immortal being, I don't know what's going to shake them loose. All I can hope is that the victims of this cult are able to heal. I hope their families are able to heal. And I hope they're able to take a step back and recognize that the 3D isn't so bad. There are people out here that want to love, support, and help them deconstruct these troubling beliefs, if only they would let us. And I just want to reiterate again, I am not trying to make any excuses for Amy. She was abusive, she was manipulative. You could argue she was evil. But my thoughts keep coming back to this Miquel character, Archangel Miquel. He really was the one who started monetizing the business side of it, and then he put his own name on it, and then he just cashed out everything when she passed away and just kind of disappeared. He called the cops on his own home and said, "There's a body here. You need to come pick it up," basically. And then he owned the house, he owned the property, the business was in his name, but he was the one setting up the structure. And so I would be really curious to learn a little bit more about his role in everything. It's really hard to find a lot of information about him. And of course, this is all speculation and alleged, and it does not mean that like Amy didn't do anything. She obviously was the perpetrator, right? But it just makes me wonder about this Miquel guy, and I'm really curious to know, what do you guys think? Because Love Is One became a nonprofit in 2020, which means they didn't have to be taxed. So when he cashed out over $300,000, like right after she passed away. Her children didn't get that. None of her followers got that. I mean, honestly, I believe if they were cashing out 401ks and retirement to go live there, they deserve some type of payout from Miquel. You know what I mean? I suppose I could rant on that for a while, but I'm really curious to know what you all think about this group. On one hand, I'm so angry at Amy because she really got in deep with a lot of vulnerable people and really, I don't want to say ruined their lives, but warped their lives. I've been trying to think about an appropriate and concise way to conclude this video and this series, and it's been very difficult for me because I don't want to come across as like an apologist, but I also have a lot of compassion because I just have this feeling that she was a victim to her own addiction, you know? An addiction can be really hard to get out of. But again, if she was alive today, I would definitely believe that she needed to be stopped and the cult needed to be destroyed. So, guys, let me know what you think. Just remember with this, you can't believe everything you see on the internet. I would not be an anti cult channel if I didn't encourage you to even question what I say. Sometimes it's a hit to my ego when I get feedback from you guys or someone pushes back on an opinion that I have. Obviously, I'm a human, I have feelings, but at the same time, I do want my channel to be a place where we can have a respectful discourse in the comments, you know? So that we can understand different points of view better. Because I think when we're stuck in one way of thinking, one belief, we're just feeding into this cult mentality. And that's what I want to encourage people to not do. So if you watched this video and you were just curious about this point of view, or if you're someone who's still in the cult or a family member of someone who is still subscribing to some of the belief systems, I would love to hear from you. You can always feel free to email me and share your story with me. And just remember to always ask questions and always trust your gut instinct and your intuition. I thank you all so much for your support. Don't forget that Tiffany's Amazon wish list is down in the pinned comment down below. And I really, really appreciate your support. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you all so much and have a great day. Bye.